Okay, well, Dale, since you're on the end, would you introduce yourself, please?
My name's Dale Seward. I live at 222 East Franklin Street, and I've been there for about 6 years, 7 years, and I don't know what all you want.
Well, just introduce yourself, and then I'll come back and I'll say, why are you running for mayor?
Oh, okay.
I'll do that, yeah. Just introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are
I am Dale Seward.
and that you're running for mayor.
Oh, then I'm running for mayor.
Okie dokie. Jeff? I don't believe I've ever said okie dokie in one of these before.
I'm Jeff Kibler. I live at 1120 South Hamilton Street. I've been there May 1st. I'll be there 23 years. I'm running for District 4 City Council.
And Gail?
My name is Gail Connor. I live at 510 East Franklin. I'm a lifelong resident of Delphi and a school teacher, and I'm running for the position of mayor for the city of Delphi.
Okay, so let me get started. Gail, tell me why you're running for mayor, please.
Sure. I'm running for mayor because I've seen things change and not in a positive way in the city of Delphi. Sitting on the city council for a little over 3 years definitely opened my eyes to the inner workings of city government. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and I've witnessed some wrongdoing that's concerning. I just feel I have the strength and the leadership to be a leader servant for the city and to bring the quality of place back to Delphi, and also get the financial situation under control. So I think that God has given me a lot of talents and the energy and the wisdom to run the city.
Thank you. Jeff, why are you running for, not mayor, but city council district
4. District
Quattro?
4.
Yes.
I'm running because I have seen a lot of, seems like special interest, things that are getting passed that maybe help a few people, special groups, but I feel like seniors are being left out. I feel like the majority of Delphi is being left out in special interest things. I think that money is being spent not in a wise fashion and not with accountability. It concerns me the direction that the city is heading. I recently retired from Caterpillar, so I feel like I have enough time now to actually do the job. When I was working at Caterpillar, I was working 6 days a week, so I would not have had the time to do that. And now, being retired, I have that time because I am retired, and I can devote myself to being the best city council member that I can be.
Okie doke. And Dale, why are you running for mayor?
Well,
Against Gail.
against what?
Against Gail.
Oh, and Cameron.
And Cameron, who is not here. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, I served on the city council in the last term for 4 years. I've been to several meetings between then and now. I've watched the deterioration with the spending. I've watched the deterioration with our city in a lot of different aspects. I have the leadership to turn that around, and it does need to be turned around. If we keep going the path we're going to go down a long, long road that is not good. We need to curb our spending. We need to shore up our budgets. We need to have budgets for water and wastewater and improve that. And there's several different things and different departments that need more improvement than you know what an introduction would hold. And I have the experience to do that. I have the leadership to do that. And it needs to be done. If we don't do it now, I'm not sure where we're going to be in 4 years. So.
And I'll tell you, anybody it wants to stand up and talk, you can. You don't have to sit there if you don't want to. It's up to you. And does anybody have questions yet?
I have 3.
You have 3. you want to go with one of them?
Okay, I'm Linda Gingrich, live at 210 West Vine. We've been there since 1967. Lifelong resident of Delphi, well, West Delphi until John and I were married, but I have I have three things I'd like to ask.
And are you asking a specific candidate?
Well, I'll start with Dale.
Okay,
Senator Alting mentioned last night at the Lincoln Day dinner how Indiana is #1 for business. How are you planning on capitalizing on that?
That goes back to what I said a while ago with our current focus on what's going on. We're spending a lot of money where it doesn't need to be spent, and we're not attracting any businesses that are of any significance. You look back on the last 8 years, 12 years, or whatever, and, you know, population-wise, we're the same as we were in the 1900s. And we don't seem to be growing. And you sit there and you hear a statistic like that, and you kind of sit there and you think, well, if Indiana's #1 in business, where are they at? Because they sure aren't here. I don't think we're doing enough and providing enough leadership to attract businesses here and to make things better. And don't get me wrong, when I say growth, I don't mean an explosion of growth. I'm not talking 1,000 houses next year and 400 new businesses. That's overrunning our infrastructure, and we're getting ahead, we're getting ahead of our skis, in other words, to use a worn-out term. We need slow and steady growth. We need to be patient, and we need just a small amount of houses next year and keep going. And that will help bring new ideas to Delphi. It will help bring new businesses to Delphi. One of the things that I'd like to do, I'm going to put a board member on the Board of Works, one of my 2 appointments, who is a financial person. And I've already talked to them, and I discussed this, and I said, why can't we put a packet together that has different incentives to come here? You could walk up to a business or contact a business, or they contact you in like Warsaw or Wabash, Indiana, and say, hey, we're interested in moving. We're interested in having a second location. What could Delphi offer to us? Well, there's always tax incentives and this, that, and the other. But how would it be to have a folder to be able to hand to that business and say, okay, here's your tax incentives. Here's what we'll agree to do for you as far as hookups and different things like that, and possibly a discount or whatever you need. And here's some land that's available. Here's some buildings that are available, or here's some buildings that we can build on your land and move forward with bringing your business here. I think there's a lot of businesses out there that may be interested in coming to Delphi because of the heartland and all that other stuff, but they don't know what we have to offer in that regard. The EDC covers a lot of industry attraction, or that's their main focus. I think we need to be focused as a city on attracting businesses, and that's how I'll do it.
okay. Gail, do you have anything to say about that?
Sure.
Since you're running against Dale.
Another thing that Senator Alting brought out last night was the agricultural production, and we're not only Indiana ranks nationally, but also where Carroll County ranks, and I believe it was in the top 5. And that is something that when the EDC, which is the Economic Development Corporation, was originally established here in Carroll County, it was recommended to them to go after commercial and industrial businesses that could tie into our agricultural productivity here in the county. And we have the hog plant. We also have directly across from the hog plant a shovel-ready site that's ready to accept development. Unfortunately, we have to be careful about the business we attract because of our infrastructure. We have plenty of water now, but our sewage plant is running near capacity. So we can't look at more food processing. We can't look at anything that provides a lot of waste. It would have to be something like packaging materials. And my first thought is to go after somebody who's providing all of those packaging materials to IPC that they use every day in bulk, and put that across the street. Another thing that I've talked to people about as I've walked around is we have the Hoosier Heartland, we have the rail bed. So transportation is one of the things we should be marketing, and we're not. We do have some incentives available to developers. We have the Rural Opportunity Zone incentive, we have tax abatements, we have TIF districts, where if they come in and have to put in infrastructure, that can be revenue back to them over time as we capture those TIF dollars, those increment dollars. So my first thought is, and I realize it's outside of the city limit, but it's going to impact the city in a positive way. And if it's something we can tie into what's already here, I think we need to be smart about how we market our city.
Jeff, you wanna say anything about this? You're not running for mayor, but, you know, city council has a lot to do with what happens.
It does, I think that we do need to get more businesses here. I've watched, when Globe Val closed down, when Peters Remington closed down, and I knew people that lost their jobs at both of those places. And, you know, those businesses are hard to replace, something like that size, but it would be nice to have some more businesses come here, but like both candidates have said, there's things that we need to do to attract them. If they don't know what's here, they're not gonna come. So we have to inform them of what we have, what's available.
Okay, thanks. Question 2?
Okay, I'm gonna direct this one to, first to, Gail. You said something about we have adequate water. Do we really?
We do. I've sat in meetings where that question has been asked, and our water production capabilities are stronger than they've been in a very long time. And
But are they pumping them?
it depends on where they're pumping from and how much is being required. Like right now, 82% of our water being pumped is going to the hog plant. They're taking 82% of our draw. So, but we have done 4 bonds in the last, since 2015, the last 8 years for $15 million, to improve our water infrastructure.
But getting it out of the ground is only part of the problem.
Yes, and I still believe, which I advocated for several years ago, was to tap into the Taze River, because Logansport and Lafayette both tap into the Taze River for their source of water for their cities. We're not doing that. A previous administration claimed that the mineral content was too high. It would have cost us $1 million to tap into that, to have an endless supply of water. Instead, we bonded $15 million, and we're still in debt over $10 million. So the water supply is not the issue at that point. At this point, it's the sewage capacity that's going to limit what we can go after and try to attract in the way of business.
So, can I add one onto that? Sure. So how much of our sewage issue is due to the hog plant, us being at capacity?
I haven't heard pumping capacity percentages for that. I do know that the next phase plan is to go from 10-inch pipes from the hog plant all the way to our sewage plant up to 14-inch pipes, because they want to expand their production.
And we're paying for that.
The conversations I've had with the mayor over the last 2 years, I pushed and asked her what conversations she's had with IPC to find out what they're going to pay, what their buy-in is. To my knowledge, she hasn't had that conversation yet.
Sorry, thank you.
That's fine. Dale, you wanna talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, the bonds currently total $15 million. The city is in debt $15 million, and some of that goes back to well before this water project. We may have an adequate amount of water now, but to me, from what I've seen when I sat on the council, that's fragile, because that water is pumped from wells out on the golf course and around that area. And with more expansion that you get from US Aggregate, and they are moving that direction. From where they are now, they're going to be, and it may be years upon years, but they're going to be across Carrollton Road and into that area. Now, what's that gonna do to our water supply? We need to be ready to look at alternatives. Going to the Taze River, the amount of money that it was estimated for back when I was there was millions upon millions of dollars. It wasn't feasible, plus the fact you had to pipe it all the way from outside of Carrollton Road, near Carrollton Bridge, all the way back in. It just wasn't feasible. The other alternative, when I sat on the council and I advocated for it, I had estimates where you could drill 3 wells on the old Brethren Home property in Flora, and then you could go north through the Colin Eikenberry farm, and then turn west and come down into a right-of-way there, and pump that water all the way down to US 421 right across from the hog plant. That would have been unlimited water, and that would have been more of a permanent fix than what we did. In one of our meetings, Carolyn Pearson leaned over with a shocked look on her face and asked Shane Evans when he was mayor, she said, "What do you mean this is a temporary fix?" He said, "Well, it is, it's not a permanent fix." And she said, "Well, what are you talking?" He says, "Probably have to redo it in 3 to 5 years." It's coming close to that now. Is it gonna make it past then? I don't know, I hope so. But we need to be ready to think and get ready to move with some other option and idea. And that may be a gradual thing that we don't spend a lot of money on. Maybe it's a 4 or 5 year project to get from here to where we're okay again. The one thing, the downside of that is, Flora didn't have surface water, but they're basically sitting on a swamp. So there's plenty of water there. Once we bring that to 421, if we'd ever do that, you'd have to have a treatment center that would have to be visited and tested once a day. It's not a 24-hour thing like surface water or that situation. So, you gotta be prepared for that. As far as the business stuff is concerned, a lot of that stuff's already been tried. We need to think outside, another overused term, we need to think outside the box and come up with different ideas to move forward to try and think of new ways to get business here.
Can I ask what
Sure.
would be the cost to process the water from Flora to Delphi?
I don't remember what it was, but it was, I think the water project that was done was 14 million, and my estimates, I believe, were 9 million. I talked to a supply distributor in Peru, and he gave me estimates on everything. But there again, it's been 40 years, but I think it was $9 million.
And then how many pumping stations would you have to continue that water from Flora to Delphi?
A pumping station, you'd have to have some pumps to get it going, but the final estimate was 9 million.
Jeff, you wanna weigh in on this?
I remember when we talked about the water,
Mhm.
and it seemed like the administration at the time was very tunnel focused on one thing and one thing only. And that really concerned me when there was other options that could be there. The thing that concerns me about our current well situation is if the quarry decides to go deeper, our water table is gonna drop, and they can do that. That's their property. They're in the business to make money, and they sell gravel. That's how they make money. So if they go deeper, our water table goes, and then we're right back into the same problem that we had.
So as a city council member, how would you address that? Not as a mayor, as a city council person.
Well, we would have to look at all the options that we could come up with, and then try to be economical in what we do, and do the right thing, and not just get tunnel focused on one thing, but try to pick the best project that would help the citizens the best for the longest term.
If something was chosen, if a project was chosen and you didn't agree with it, would you vote against it?
Yes, I would.
Would you, what? Okay,
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, if I didn't agree with something, I don't have a problem saying that I disagree with it.
okay, okay.
Denny Myers and I and 3 or 4 other citizens made an appointment and made a trip to Purdue University and talked to geologists, hydro guys, and I can't even pronounce half their titles. But anyway, we sat down with them for an afternoon, and they indicated to us, you know, you got your water here. If drilling happens back here, and that disturbs what Jeff said with the water table, that water is gonna go south. And then these wells are not going to produce as much water because they don't have as much water. So that was the problem that I always thought was the biggest deal with that project. So that's what we did. We tried to find a different route and tried, but Jeff's right. I mean, it was tunnel vision, and that was it. So I voted against it, and we went from there.
I think something too that's kind of put us in a bind is the fact that we've gone into this debt. And like I mentioned before, we're pumping 82% of our water to the hog plant. We need to be mindful of the fact that the citizens come first. And they do have some wells out there, but they would prefer not to use them because they would have to treat. I think it's due to the sulfur content. But we're also at the point too, where we have to have their revenue to pay down the debt that we're under because of what this situation has created. But moving forward too, we need to be mindful that we are representative of serving the citizens, and that should be the priority. So if something needs to be done differently in the future, that's where the priority should lie.
That was the beauty of coming from Florida. Because you bring that water down 100 north in the right of way, and you bring it to that water treatment plant at 421 and 100. That water could have been used, maybe not exclusively, but that water could have been used primarily just across the road to IPC, just across the road to the industrial park. That left all the other water that's pumped out here from the US aggregates and stuff like that for our citizens. But now, with this project, we've drilled over here at the golf course in that area. And then we pumped it up Prince William Road and all the way to the hog plant. And that's a long way. And that water could have been used for housing our citizens and their residents like that. And then we could have had 2 different sources, and I think that was a better idea, the eggs in one basket theory.
Do you have another question?
I think this one you can probably answer first.
I hope so.
This must be an easy one.
Would you have any ideas on how you can curb some of the spending for, I hate to say frivolous, but, well,
Give us an example.
who would put a multi-million-dollar apartment building in a floodplain? Now, I'm not the brightest bulb in the string by any means, but even I know you don't put buildings in a floodplain. And that's what our current mayor, is saying she wants to do.
And you're asking Jeff first?
I'm asking Jeff, as a member of the council, what kind of kickback would you give?
I would be against that project. I am against that project. It's not just the building in a floodplain, it's the infrastructure all around it that cannot support that kind of traffic. I heard talk that they may have to take the street and make more one-way streets. We don't need one-way streets in Delphi. Delphi is way too little for one-way streets.
We've got 2.
I know.
I've walked down both those wrong way.
Yeah.
We all have, yeah.
Yeah. I've caught myself halfway down one and turned around, but you get so used to doing that. I've done that for over 30 years, and you just don't think about it sometimes. And it's not real well marked to see that you're not supposed to
And
go down there.
why are we is the city in the real estate business?
Well, they shouldn't be. I don't think we should have took on that building at South Washington Street right by the creek either.
That's correct.
We're gonna end up losing money on that deal. And I don't think that the money is being spent in a wise manner like that.
There needs to be time for you guys to vote on it, not just stuff shoved through.
Right.
Somebody's gonna make money.
Oh, yeah.
Do either of the mayoral candidates
Yeah,
wanna,
I would.
would you like to do that too? Yeah, that's okay. I'm just gonna
Well,
sit down here.
You know, the 64 unit apartment building scares me for multiple reasons and not just because of the floodplain aspect. You've got apartments right now through the, my source is the treasurer, county treasurer. And we are at 23%, I believe, from what she told me. It may be a little, in between 23 and 24% of rental property in Delphi. Nothing wrong with rental property. Every place needs rental property. What concerns me is you're talking about apartments through the meetings I went to, $1,300 and $1,400 average a month for apartment. 64 of them. That's a lot. I'm not so sure we've got the ability to fill those up. And what happens if we don't? Potentially go to Section 8. Kokomo just went through this in the last administration with Greg Goodnight. Brought in a bunch of those type of buildings and a bunch of those projects. That's why I'm not excited about this opportunity zone stuff from the state. It doesn't thrill me at all because you have stuff like this. You have these duplexes coming in people's backyards that don't have, you know, they have private living basically, and they should have with 11-foot streets. But, you know, Goodnight brought these into Kokomo, and before Rosworski put a kibosh on them in Lafayette, they were coming in. And what you get is you get people coming in from larger cities where there's violence and everything like that, and they bring that violence with them. And shootings have gone up, calls for services have gone up, and everything else. Everybody talks about infrastructure, water and electricity and all that other stuff. What about our infrastructure when it comes to emergency services, police, ambulances, and stuff like that? That stuff goes up too. And the 2 apartment buildings that were put up 8 or 10 years ago are perfect examples of that. If you look at the police statistics, those percentages are up, and those calls for services are you know, way higher than any place else in town.
And you're talking about Canal Commons, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, it's a bad deal because it's in a partial floodplain. I think most of that's gonna be covered by a parking lot and not the building. But you've got a lot of other problems with it too that make it, in my opinion, non-desirable.
Gail?
Sure. I sat on the council when the original developer came, Mr. Shelby Bowen, and explained his vision for that property. I don't know, I know some of you in this room signed the petition that I carried against the apartment complex being built in that location. I'm not against housing. One of my biggest concerns from the research I did was the heated runoff from all of the surface area of Blacktop, and the impact that would have on the creek. So that was one of the first things that came to mind. One of the things that was also explained during that phase of this project proposal was the fact that the differential between what Delphi currently averages for rent and what he was wanting to use as his market rate was significant enough that Delphi was going to have to come up with about 42% of the funds to get that off the ground.
You mean the city of Delphi?
Mhm.
The taxpayers?
Mhm.
Okay.
I went last Monday evening, 2 Monday evenings ago, when the second developer that they've now gotten to take on this project came. I was the only mayoral candidate that went to that meeting and listened to the presentation from those gentlemen. I heard pretty much the same type of information. They plan on high-end, high-quality fixtures, which is going to increase the rate. It's also going to be built as a bot, a build, operate, transfer. So they will build it, they will operate it, and the way that works is they operate it until basically they get their return on their investment, and then they transfer ownership of it to another entity such as the city or another person who'd be interested in taking on that responsibility. So again, I went to my constituents. I've lived here all my life. I'll tell you personally, I didn't want to see that change. The first person to call me was Marshall Mechanic. He lives right across the street. He was devastated that his, whole neighborhood was going to change. It was very upsetting. He and his wife went and tried to talk to the mayor, and they were not treated very kindly by her. This came from him. He shared with me everything that was said. I'm not gonna do that. But, he was very upset. And I carried a petition to see what people had to say. I think I got around 150 signatures in a matter of a couple of weeks. Very few people refused. A lot of people were against it being built in that location. And again, we need to pull back on this hurry up mentality and look at the best options, the most fiscally responsible options, and that's not happening with the current administration. And that's why we are where we are today.
The meeting I went to, which was the first meeting with the meeting, the open house with the first developer, and that meeting, they expressed the rental rates and the window of that between 13 and 1,400 at an apartment. And the other stuff, when you asked enough questions, the other stuff was our investment. The city of Delphi's investment was going to be around $5.5 million. I can't imagine, I've started many, many businesses. Some I've failed, some I've been successful at. I can't imagine going to a public sector and getting money to start a business that I'm gonna make money at. I'd be ashamed. But that's your opportunity zone stuff.
So I kind of got to ask a question here because if it's a build, operate, transfer, and it's ready to be transferred, and they don't find another business or entity as mayoral candidates, would you accept to own that apartment complex?
I think the bigger question is, would you have a choice?
Really? Is there a commitment that the city of Delphi would have
I
to do?
don't know what the contractual commitment's going to be, and if that's done before either one of us take office, then we're bound to a contract, and that's something that's concerning.
Dale, what do you think?
I think that's why everything's being rushed right now.
Is that all you're going to say?
Well, I mean,
No, okay.
I think that's why everything's being rushed. They wanna get everything done prior to anybody else taking office.
Mm-hmm. Okay, other questions?
Sharon Milburn, 304 Armory Road. I have, this is directed at both the mayor candidates. I have seen and heard about candidate Gates participating in a lot of publicized activities in the community. Are you just as active? If so, why are you not informing the voters in the community about your activities? Would you be willing to share some of your activities that you have not shared with them to date tonight?
Sure.
Wait, who do you want to go first?
Gail.
Okay.
Well, I don't know who went first last time.
I don't know, we're not keeping track.
I don't either.
That's with the debate, you know. Yeah. Okay.
I've spoken to the senior citizens. I asked for that opportunity to go down and speak with them. For the past 2 months, I've walked door to door in probably 70% of the town and talked with people. I was invited to participate in the parade this coming weekend and declined to do so because I didn't want to take away from the kids. It's a Little League parade, and I felt like there was no need for me to be involved with that.
As a candidate, is that
Yes.
why you were invited?
Yes, I was, and I declined because, like I said, I don't want to take away from the kids.
Mhm.
And it was also made known to me from a Comet staff member that if it becomes a political event, then the paper can't just take pictures of the kids without having to charge someone for advertisement, because it becomes a political event instead of just a youth event.
Dale?
I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and relate things that I do and volunteer for. I volunteer in the community and do things. As far as my candidacy and as far as dealing with the public, I have through this candidacy, as I did when I sat on the city council, as I will do after I'm elected, I will have town hall meetings to make sure that the citizens have time or have an opportunity to talk to me. I have town hall meetings now, sometimes nobody shows up, and that's okay. I give them a chance to talk. I give them a chance to come in and speak their mind and everything like that. That is their choice. But other than that, I mean, I deal with the public. I talk to the public every day. And, I get a good sense for what they're thinking and what they're doing and what they want. So, but as far as my activities and everything like that, I'm not discussing.
Okay. Did you have another one?
What would you say is your great, and I'll direct this at Jeff first. What would you say is your greatest strength, and how will that help you in your current position that you're running for? And what would you say is your greatest weakness, and what would you do to overcome that weakness in order to do an effective job?
I think my greatest strength is the fact that I'm a Christian. I trust in God, believe in God, and lean on Him. I'm the minister of our church. And so I think that gives me a lot of comfort and peace, gives me guidance. I pray all the time for guidance in things. And weaknesses, we all have weaknesses. Every one of us has something. I remember an old preacher friend of mine, he's been gone quite some time ago, but he said, we all have a little pet sin that we feed scraps under the table. So we all have little things that we work on. One of the things, I kind of relay that sometimes in church. I can really relate to Peter. Peter was the apostle that talked first and thought second. And I used to be a lot more like that, but I am learning to try to think first before I open my mouth. And so that is something I work on, and controlling, sometimes we get upset. I try to be more even keel. The older I get, the easier that is for me to do, because when we look at life and we think about the fact that if we were looking at losing our life, is the things that we get upset about worth being mad about as we enter into eternity? And usually the answer is no. And so as we think about those kind of things, that helps keep things more on an even keel.
Did you want the rest to? Okay. I forgot the question. What is it?
What would you say is your greatest strength, and how would that help you in the position you're running for? And what is your greatest weakness, and what would you do to overcome that weakness to do the best job that you can?
Gail, do you want to go, or Dale talked last? I don't know. Dale, do you want to go?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay, I know that I have a very strong ability to research things and find information and network and use my resources to look up information and then make discerning decisions from that. I would say but in using that in the mayoral position, we've seen a lot of this hurry up and waste mentality, and I believe that you need to really take time to research and understand everything, and know what you're doing, and make sure that the city council knows what they're doing. So I think just researching information, and I've always been strong at collecting resources. My weakness will be technology. I rely on my kids at school to help me with things. I'm not a techno-giza wizard. Thankfully, I have a brother who is a computer programmer, but that would probably be a weakness that I would need to buff up those skills.
Dale?
My weakness, I'll start off with my weakness. I would get it out of the way. My weakness is um, worrying too much about what other people think and say. I too am a Christian, and it's taken me a long time. I've dealt with issues over the years and everything like that, and I finally got back to church, and I've strengthened my faith, I've strengthened my ability to let things go a little bit more because of that faith. And I think my strength there is getting better. As far as my strength in the job, it's my life experiences. I mean, I've been down, and I've been back going up. And, you know, I've been in, like I said, in business. I have a law enforcement background, private investigator background. And that and a lot of other things, when you combine your life experience, those things play into running a city quite nicely, as a matter of fact. So I'm looking forward to that, to being able to use those strengths and past experiences to be able to make the right decisions for the citizens and move forward that way.
I'm going to ask a question because it's time. And one of the things that certainly I personally believe in, and so does the Comet, is transparency. I mean, everybody says transparency, but the fact is we believe the public has a right to know what the government is doing. I would like for you to, each one of you, talk about your experiences with the current government, and if you think something should be different, what would you do differently? Dale, go.
Honesty and integrity promotes transparency. And those are two qualities that I believe I have and will bring to the office: honesty and integrity. And when you have that, there's no need to keep secrets. And I believe every public document should be accessible to the public, be it on the computer, be it in the city building that you can come in and get it, being wherever, however it's easiest for the public to get it. They are paying the tax dollars. That is what makes the government go. And to me, they have every right to every public document. I will draw a line if we're trying to attract business or industry or something like that, and it's of a competitive nature. That kind of stuff needs to be kept kind of under wraps for a while until we are successful with that. But everything else, spending-wise, money-wise, what we're doing here, what we're doing there, as far as public documents are concerned, that needs to be accessible by every citizen all the time.
How about meetings?
The open door law needs to be followed, and if you're going to change locations, you need to make the public aware of that. We just went through that, and everything else. Why keep the secrets? If you're not doing anything bad, why keep the secrets? Let's be open and honest and have an open and honest government. That's what it's supposed to be. So that's where I'm at on it. And when you have a situation where you are keeping secrets, all that does is promote corruption. Hate to say the word, but there you go. When you keep secrets and you keep things from the public, it's easier for corruption to weasel its way into city government, and then you've got a bigger problem. We've already got a reputation, and well, everybody does, let's be honest, but we've already got a reputation where the citizens are questioning, what are you doing? Is this corruption? Is it political corruption? Is it criminal corruption? Is it corruption at all? We need to make sure and instill in the public more confidence in their city government. And that's what I promise you I will do.
Jeff? Let's just go down the road, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Up until last year, we had bought into a resort up in Michigan. And so they have a board. It's owned by the members and run by the members. One of the things that they had trouble with there was a lack of transparency. And so a board president here a few years back said, from now on, we're gonna bring up an idea, but we are not gonna vote on it that month. We are gonna give a month for all of the members to hear about it, have time to get back to the board members so that they can have their input. Things get brought up and then fast-tracked right through in the same meeting. There's no opportunity for the public to have input. And I think that's a really good way to practice, in having time for the public to get back. As a council member, we serve the people. We are responsible for the people and for the tax dollars that are entrusted in us. There's no free money. That's all taxpayer money that we need to be accountable for.
And that's the people of Delphi.
Yes.
Gail?
I can remember, when we were first seated on the council, we were 5 new council members, and we were entitled to have our own legal representation. We met in this room right here in January of 2020.
I remember that.
I requested our council attorney to come, and one thing he said to me stuck out and stayed with me that night. He said, "You may not be doing wrong, but if you ever give the appearance of wrong, then that's what people are going to remember about you." He said, "You have to think about appearances, and if you have to think about it, then don't do it." I know that in the last 4 years, I filed a couple of complaints with the public access counselor about violations of the open door law. It's not a suggestion, it's a law, it's state statute. The public notice that Debbie talked about, it's a law, it's not a suggestion. And it's something you're required to do every time there's a meeting, every time there's a public hearing, and there are certain parameters for that, how many days, how many hours ahead of time. One of the biggest complaints that people have, and even as a council person, we didn't see our agenda and supporting documentation until Friday afternoon or Saturday before a Monday meeting. The mayor has a whole month to put that together. Yes, things could change at the last minute, but to not even give the respect to the citizens to know what's going to be presented, to give them a chance to ask questions of their council representatives, of the mayor, of the clerk treasurer, it's disrespectful. There's no other way to look at it. They need that time. And if you're afraid to let them know what you're doing, then something doesn't look right. So that's something that has to change. A couple of administrations ago, the promise was everything would be public, it'd be on the Facebook page, it'd be on the city website on Wednesday prior, it never happened. This administration, same promise, never happened. The public wants more than just an agenda that says we will talk about this. They want to see the actual documentation. They want to know what it says. They don't want to show up at a meeting and say, we're going to approve this now by title only, and it's ordinance number 2023-1. That doesn't mean anything to them. They want to know. And above all else, they want to hear their council representatives informed and asking questions and having input instead of just saying, yes, Madam Mayor, whatever you want.
Anything else?
I think another thing that needs to be improved is and I don't wanna come across as everything's gotta be either social media or on the internet. There's some people that don't run in those circles. But one of the other things that needs to be improved is the city's website. It needs to be updated. The old stuff needs to be taken off, and the new stuff needs to be on there. Every public document should be posted on the city's website. That way, the people, the demographic that goes to there will be able to find it there.
Do you think Facebook is a be-all, end-all
No.
for communication?
No, but it's a piece.
Mhm.
It's a piece of the puzzle. There are Facebook users, there are website users, there's all kinds of different things. There are people that aren't even on the internet. We've got to figure out a way to get to them too.
And of course, there are
And
the
they
people
deserve
who
that.
read the newspapers, yeah.
Yeah.
Read the
Kept
paper.
trying, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, who else has a question? Denny?
Denny Myers, 949 Northwest Street. I just like to, not attack you, Gil, or anything, but, you talked about Indiana Packers and the water issue and all that, like they're our problem. In the late, and it refers to, back to drawing business, and as we made a commitment in the late eighties to Indiana Packers to supply them all the water they wanted to previous, our administration, or Mayor Carolyn Knight at the time. There's been tens of millions of dollars paid by Indiana Packers to the city of Delphi.
Yep.
That's been spent elsewhere. They're not the problem. They pay for their water. There was an agreement made that we will supply them water. They bought two other finishing plants, one in Warsaw, Kentucky, and one in Frankfort, Indiana, that would have been built across the street with hundreds and possibly 1,000 jobs. We neglected to supply them water. It's not them. And folks, that I just didn't want these folks that don't know any better. What the problem is they spent, our administration spent the money over the years, tens of millions of dollars in other places, instead of put it back in the water infrastructure like they should.
Right, and that brings up a really good point, because, I do know at one point in time, that whole, promise with them was brought up in a council meeting, and I think it was before I sat on the council. And somebody wanted to know where that contract was, that stated that we would supply them whatever, and they never found that. So that's interesting that you know that. Another thing is too, that, one of the reasons we had to bond so much money here in the last few years was because there had been no maintenance cycle for things like our water towers. And, you know, they found several feet of moss growing inside of a water tower, so it had to be taken down and cleaned. And that's something that we need to be a better steward of what we have.
That's by law, Indiana state law, that's supposed to be done every 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's never been done
Yeah.
since they've been built.
And that's something that I think, you know, has to be a top priority for some of our departments to look at. And I'm not saying that our department heads aren't willing to do that, it just hasn't been done. And that's something that strong leadership will look at and take care of.
But I've been in the transportation trucking business my whole life, 35 years. I'm probably longer than that, counting. Every city that's had a plant like that, either beef or pork or whatever, chicken, it don't matter. They pick a little city like Delphi and build it there, and the city explodes around it. I mean, business, like, I'll just pick one, like Garden City, Kansas. There was a town like Yoma, and it's the size of Lafayette today. That's been 30, 40 years ago. And there's cardboard manufacturers, and all that depends on the water that we promised them, that the finishing plants, that clean jobs that women could do, packaging. Nobody wants to work. I worked there many years, maintenance, but nobody works. It takes a special person to work in a packing plant, but it's the 15 businesses around it that could be here. And it's all because they spent the money and didn't update the water.
I think that's a good point. Two things come to mind though. We've never had good leadership to leverage Indiana Packers. And, we should be leveraging them.
Exactly.
And, sorry, if I don't write it down, I'll forget it. But, you know, that's why we don't have the housing that we don't have. That's why we have the situation that we've got now, because we've never worked with and leveraged Indiana Packers. You've got people who are being bussed in or traveling by car from Marion, Indiana, Anderson, Indiana, Peru, even up to Chicago. I'll go through there and see Illinois plates, and they ain't living here. We've never worked with them and got a situation where, you know, work with us to where we build houses and let's get some of your employees closer. That way they're not calling in on snow days and sick days and everything like that, that they could be here or could be at work if they lived closer. And another thing with you're talking about budgets and spending money, you've got a situation where and it's not the department heads, don't get me wrong, but you've got a situation where you've got a water department and a wastewater department with no budget. We haven't had a budget in those two departments for multiple years. They refuse. We requested that from the city council, or a couple of us did, to have those kind of budgets in addition to street department, police department, airport, and everything else. Never got them. They would never pursue it and never do it. And in the meantime, they spend money here, they spend money there, we pay for the Christmas party, we do this, we do that. That water should be trusted, especially by the citizens, to be in the water department budget and the wastewater department budget as it comes in.
When it needs to.
But it's turned in, I'm sorry, but it's turned in basically to a slush fund. And we've spent money out of those things, and then what happens? We need a project, we need a water project. Well, guess what? We don't have the money because we've spent it on everything else. That should be accruing. And when you have to bond money to fix things like that, that's on the backs of the citizens and the ratepayers who pay the water bills faithfully every month. We need that demand. I'll demand I don't care if it's a soft budget. I will demand a water budget and a wastewater budget.
Just, both of you been on city council. You got any idea of the revenue that went through the water department?
You can, you can look at Indiana Gateway, and it shows the receipts and the expenditures for the different departments. In 2022, the water operations received 2.2 million, spent about 2.1 million. It breaks it down to like customer receipts, and that's all available on Indiana Gateway. Statutorily, since these are self-funding, because they operate based off of fees that are collected, and they're not operating with taxpayer funds, the state statute does not require them to publish a budget. State statute does say that the mayor should meet with the department heads to create an estimated budget for capital projects and expenses and things like that moving forward, to have some idea, because it still falls upon the city council to establish the rate structure for